Live from the studios of Vermont PBS in Colchester, the Vermont Votes 2016 debates. Tonight, the candidates for governor debate the top issues in this important election season. Here's moderator Joe Marone.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's debate for governor on Vermont PBS. I'm Joe Marone, and I'll be moderating tonight's debate between the three candidates on the Vermont ballot who are vying to become Vermont's next and newest governor. Let me introduce them to you now. First, Bill Lee of Craftsbury is the Liberty Union Party candidate. Democrat Sue Minter is from Waterbury, and Republican Phil Scott is from Berlin, Vermont. Welcome to you all. I'd also like to introduce with me tonight Neil Goswami, who is Bureau Chief for the Vermont Press Bureau. The format for tonight's debate, relatively straightforward. Questions will come from myself, from Neil, and later on in the later portion of the program from our members of the studio audience. Questions will be introduced to all the candidates. Each of them will have 1 minute to answer. There may be a follow-up and rebuttal time devoted to each topic. Then at the end, there's closing remarks of 1 minute apiece. Laura Walsh is our timekeeper. She'll keep everybody on time. Welcome, candidates, to you all. First question. If you are elected on November 8th, you are going to have less than 2 months before you're sworn in as Vermont's next governor. 2 months to assemble the team, set your agenda. You'll have a new legislature, and new legislative leadership as well. How are you going to hit the ground running? What is your top priority, and how are you going to get to it, Mr. Lee?
Well, my best catcher is Miro Weinberger. He drove me in for the winning run in the Vermont State Championship. I have a lot of friends in this state that I take advice from, and I believe that they'll all help me out. You know, I did not come here seeking this job. It was pressed upon me by the Liberty Union Party. They came to me and said, you have to run. This is an open seat. We need change in this state, and you're the change. And I'm the guy that's going to lead you out of the woods because I am a gun-hunting right wing, but I'm also have a liberal heart. You know, I do the Memory Cafe in Montpelier. I do the Travis Roy Foundation. All I do in this state is answer the phone and help people out. And I believe I'm the best candidate for that because I am neither a Democrat nor a Republican, and I'm not your problem. I'm your solution.
Thank you very much. Next up, Sue Minter.
Well, I'm going to begin by pulling together a strong team of leaders because that is what I do well. Bring together teams, set up our challenges, face our challenges, establish goals, and achieve those goals. What I know is I'm going to bring a team together to focus on the budget and on our mission, which is to create jobs and economic opportunity for Vermonters, to support middle-class families and their kids, and give them the opportunity to live, work, and stay right here in Vermont. This is a critical time in our state. Too many Vermonters are struggling just to make ends meet because wages are not keeping up with the cost of living. Women in this economy work 43% of women who work full-time still can't meet their basic needs. We need to change this story, and I'm going to be a governor with a great team leading us forward for a better future.
Phil Scott, how are you going to hit the ground running?
Well, by doing just that. You know, it's first day is not a day for vacation. It's a day for getting to work, and I've been working my whole adult life. I've been 35 years in business, and during that time, I bring people together. I look for talent. I look for team chemistry. And that's something I've done with my race team, in politics, bringing people together, consensus building, facilitating a team that will work together in order to rise to the challenge. The challenge we face, of course, is our economy. This crisis of affordability we face in Vermont is real. And it's going to take a lot of us pulling in the same direction in order to accomplish what we need to accomplish. And that is really focusing on the budget, trying to develop that in a short period of time. And I'll be bringing together a lot of talented individuals that have already shown interest in trying to bring Vermont forward.
All right, let's drill down a little bit because the two of you have mentioned the budget already. And by all accounts, the budget Vermont will be facing a $40 million deficit for an FY18 budget. So let's get some specifics. If we have to raise taxes or fees, to cover this deficit, what are they going to be? If we have to cut something, what is it going to be? Question for the three of you. A $40 million budget deficit. Mr. Scott.
Well, I've already said, we don't have to guess at this. I will not propose or sign a budget that grows faster than the economy did in the previous year, or wages grew in the previous year. This is something that's been the problem over the last 7 years. The legislature has adopted a method of being over optimistic in their growth expectations, and during that time, they've raised taxes and fees and raised the spending limits to about $700 million over the last 7 years. So I propose that we look back to last year. We don't have to guess at this. We look back at last year and see what wages grew and what the economy grew. And if it grew at 1%, then we cap the growth of the budget to 1%. It's as simple as that, and we'll find efficiencies. We'll modernize state government, and we'll find the will to get through this without raising taxes and fees.
No specifics at this time.
I have all kinds of specifics. You can go to philscott.org and see all those, my economic plan and my budget modernization.
Sue Mitchell, $40 million budget deficit.
So I have managed a $600 million budget, balanced that budget every year as I ran the transportation agency, first as deputy, then as secretary, and I know what it takes. We had every year changes in whether the federal dollars were going to come or not. And I know it takes scenario planning. I know it takes choices between what we spend and what we don't, and how we prioritize. But I want to say one thing that's important, because Phil has not mentioned what he's planning to cut. Now, we know last year when the budget was presented and the Republicans in the House presented how they would manage the budget, the balance of the budget, they proposed cuts to child care subsidies, cuts to affordable housing, cuts to college tuition payments, cuts to our state colleges. They even cut the Commission on Women. Those are not the way that I think are going to support middle-class families and grow our economy.
Mr. Lee.
Well, I think our biggest problem is the fact that the whole paradigm is wrong. We've got too many big farms. We got BST. We got all these pollutants being sprayed on our fields. We got more cancer. We got more disease in this state. And I believe we got to go small. I believe we got to get out there and be more multidimensional, take our large farms, make them small. We're the breadbasket of New England. With global warming, we're going to be able to raise grapes on every southern exposure. You put your solar panels with your grapes and everything else, and you look at the Northeast Kingdom, we're doing well up there. Why are we doing that? We've got out of the box. We're starting to get breweries up there. We have the best cheese. We got Pete's Greens. And, you know, they can serve 1,000 families. And if you get 100 farms like that every year in 6 years, you can feed everybody in Vermont for a reasonable price, and you're going to be able to feed them the right way. You're not going to have additives in your food. And how you get it? You get taxes. You tax the bad stuff. And you make people eat better, and they're not in the hospitals, they're not in the doctor's office. And they're strong, and
We're going to stay with the budget for a second here. Neil?
Secretary Mentor, you mentioned the Republican proposals a year or two ago, and you are going to be entering office if you win with at least a $40 million budget cap. So if you don't cut anything, excuse me, you'll have to raise revenue. So if you're not planning to cut, what revenue will you raise and how will you raise it?
So right now, what we know is that our revenues are not keeping up with the projections. But we are a long way to go between now and January. We have to see how the next quarter revenues come in. I have seen extraordinary fluctuations having watched how the transportation fund has gone up and down. So I'm not going to put anything on the table until I know exactly what we're coming up with. As you know, it changes with every quarter. And I think it's important to be saying what is going to happen at that time. What I do know is, what I won't raise is new sales or service taxes that are going to hurt the middle class. You know, I looked at Phil's economic development plan, and what I saw were tax breaks, primarily for corporations and the wealthy, and I don't see any way that he has to pay for them.
We'll get back to taxes shortly, but Lieutenant Governor Scott, I want to ask you, you proposed a plan to save 1 penny or cut 1 penny for every dollar spent in state government. as you know, there are contractual obligations that the state has for salaries, for health care, things that you will not be able to save a penny off of, which focuses the burden in other areas. So knowing that you can't cut a penny from every dollar, which dollars will you really be looking at, and which programs will you be looking at?
Well, that's a goal. You know, we look at it in our own budgets, in our own daily lives. If we can save a penny for every dollar we spend, I'm sure we can find some savings. We can find savings in state government as well. We're just not looking hard enough. And we can't tax our way out of the situation we're in. That's what's been happening for the last 7 years. Sue has proposed a tax on services. Sue has proposed a carbon tax. Sue has proposed a way of this cap and trade scheme. That's not the way to get ourselves out of the situation we find ourselves in. We're in a hole right now, and we should stop digging. We're going to have to tighten our belts. We're going to find some savings and efficiencies within government, and we're going to work our way out of this. But we can't tax our way out of it. That's not a way to grow the economy.
Secretary Minter, you did embrace the idea of at least looking at the sales tax and expanding it to services, which was based on the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission report that came out a number of years ago. Since you mentioned that you were interested in looking at that report, you've put out more specifics saying you would not tax any service that is used by the middle class or largely by the middle class. You have mentioned things like limousine rides, airplanes, things like that. There are not a whole lot of airplanes registered here in Vermont. So what type of savings could you see from expanding the tax base to some services? What's the realistic goal here?
So what I've explained is that we do need to think about our future and what are the taxes that hurt middle-class Vermonters, and how can we actually build our economy to support the programs we need. I've made it very clear, and I will say it again, I will not add new sales or service taxes that hurt middle-class Vermonters. What I will do is look for those loopholes that are benefiting wealthy people, such as exemptions for lobbyists, exemptions for limousine rides, and the interest payment on second homes. Are those the things that are going to help middle-class Vermonters? What I want to also point out is that Phil and his friends in the Republican Party have been claiming falsely that I have proposed a carbon tax. It is sounding more like national Republican talking points. And I want to make it clear that I have a strategy to look at climate change, to address our carbon emissions, to build on a very successful program called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative.
We're going to move right to transportation, as a matter of fact, in a minute. But Mr. Lee, before we leave budget and taxes, if you'd like to have a closing comment.
Raise the minimum, for people working. You go by McDonald's and they say they're going to jump them to $10. They're not going to survive on $10, Tax the trash that McDonald's throws on the side of the road. And Bud Light, if you want 5 cents or 1 cent, raise the tax on a can to 10 cents. Because every skidoo trail that I go cross-country skiing on, when that snow melts, there's nothing but Bud Light cans all around America. So drink locally, think globally, and if you raise the minimum wage up high, people are going to make more money and there's going to be more taxes around. Pay people what they're worth. That's the problem on this planet. We haven't done that, and we got to start doing that. And you don't expect trickle down from Reagan. Reagan didn't work. None of that worked. Trickle down does not work. That's a prostate disease or something like that, because I'm telling you, you've got to tax the 2%. Bernie was right. Bernie's always been right. I knew him when they were throwing cans at him in Hardwick, down on the street.
So let's talk about transportation. I don't think anyone would argue that Vermont's bridges, roads, infrastructure never seems to get the maintenance dollars needed for repair and upkeep. Furthermore, pollution, climate change concerns, relative carbon emissions is always very much an issue. With the gasoline tax, an uncertain and unpredictable source of income, how do we pay for our transportation needs going forward? Mr. Lee.
Use the militia. You use all these guys that got the tanks and everything, and they're doing that. You take them out. You don't send them to Iraq or Iran like Rumsfeld said, looking for the weapons of mass destruction. Rumsfeld had the receipts for them. We gave them to him in '83. You don't send Vermonters out of this state to fight wars. I had to bury 2 of them up there, and every time damn religious right group came up there, you know, and they go out there and they wave the American flag, and here we are fighting for our lives. You take the people in the state, you join the militia, you keep your guns, and you go out there and you fix the roads. And everybody fixes the roads because they're falling apart. But go back to the old way we fixed roads with the granite things, you know. You can go back, make the roads the way they used to be. Let's put Vermont the way it used to look a long time ago.
Sue Minter, transportation.
You know, I've been working on balancing our transportation budget for the last 6 years, a $600 million budget. And I'll tell you, we have been having to work on improving maintenance. When I was in the legislature in 2009, we had to find out that bridges were closing in emergency all around the state. We actually did a study and analyzed that we had 20% of our bridges were structurally deficient. And we worked bipartisan to come up with a plan. We passed a Transportation Infrastructure Bond Fund. I had the opportunity to manage the agency and to focus on innovation and efficiency. We created a new accelerated bridge program. We're building bridges faster, cheaper, and smarter. We've gone from having 20% of our bridges structurally deficient to now just 7%. I know how to manage, how to innovate, how to make efficiencies and make government work, because we have to make sure we don't let our bridges fall down ever again.
Mr. Scott, the topic is paying for transportation.
Well, this is part of what drove me into politics to begin with. There was the raid of the transportation fund about 20 years ago to the tune of about $50-something million every single year that was used for other purposes. And that's when I decided to step up to run, because I thought that we should do better. Our roads, our infrastructure was failing. And during that time, I'm pleased to say, during my years of the Senate, we were able to reduce that from $50 million down to a more manageable $15 to $20 million. And that goes to the state police at this time. So I think that that was a step in the right direction. If you think about it, that was done, that rate of the transportation fund was done over a 10 to 20 year period. If we had invested in the infrastructure at that point in time, we wouldn't have the problem today. But I don't believe that we should be taxing our way out of this. We don't need to raise the taxes on already overburdened Vermonters. At this time, we can't afford to, and they can't afford to. So we're going to have to look for a federal initiative in order to solve this issue.
The future is different, is looking very different, with less gasoline used, electric cars, etc. Is it time for a mileage tax? Is it time for some alternate form of tax to help transportation needs?
On the national level, the federal scale, they need to start talking about something different. I agree, but not here in Vermont. We can't be doing something different than the rest of the country.
I am very focused and have been for 6 years on this very matter. And it is critically important, not just to fix our roads and bridges, but to actually help Vermonters and Americans get out of their cars by focusing on public transit, by ride sharing, by getting people to walk, by having sidewalks and bike lanes. That's what I've been working on, increasing the use of public transit. We're going to need to change people's driving behavior and get more people into electric cars. This is going to make an enormous change in how we reduce our carbon emissions. And you know what? Transportation is 46% of our carbon footprint here in Vermont. And that's why I've proposed a plan to build on the successful regional greenhouse gas initiative started under Governor Douglas to build transportation into this. So we can work together as a region to help reduce carbon emissions, help reduce the amount we have to rely on our cars, and really move forward to address climate change.
Mr. Lee.
We have a system in Venezuela, it's called Por Puesto. And anybody that needs a ride puts his finger down, and for a real, you jump in his car and you go as far as he goes on that same road. And then when you have to get out and change cars, you put your finger down, and for a real, which is a minimum amount, you get another ride. And people helping other people. I pick up hitchhikers all the time. And some of them they jump over the snowbank because they see my long hair and my beard and everything like that. And then the kid will go, oh no, that's Bill Lee, he's all right. He's not gonna hurt us. You know, and we gotta be more friendly, use more trains. We've gotta get out of this gas glut that we're in. And I'm telling you, it's down now. It's as low as it's gonna be. It's cheaper than water. You know, gas is amazingly cheap, you know, but it ain't gonna last forever, you know, and we're We're the 49th dog in this nation. We're that big. Only Wyoming is smaller than us. Go out and get a bigger dog.
If gas is as cheap as it's been, do we have the capacity to adjust the tax on it? A penny or 2 or 3 or 5?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be low forever. It's going to go back up. You can see it. It's just, they're just waiting for that moment. These gas companies, look what they did down in the hurricane yesterday. They jumped the price 40 cents at the gas pump. You know, don't go to Florida. If you retire, don't go there. I knew a farmer that went there, and 3 months later he was dead. Stay up here. You know, get back on the farm and do the right thing. Go down for a little break or something like that. But yeah, we got to get off the gas glut, you know. And you know, I was a hitchhiker, you know, and people picked me up. You know, I'm not Jack Reacher, but I wish I was.
All right. Neil has a follow-up, I believe, on transportation.
Vermont has been discussing, excuse me, the return of passenger rail, particularly in the Western Corridor, for a number of years now. If you're elected governor, would you commit your administrations to not only pursuing rail, but committing funds to completing the Western Corridor project? Lieutenant Governor Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something we've been working on in Senate Transportation for a number of years. And it's something that we've been working with the federal delegation with. Congressman Welch was on Senate Transportation with me when we started talking about this and trying to bring the Montrealer back. And some of the border concerns are some of what prevent us from going any further. But we're going to solve that problem as well. But I think it's imperative that we continue to fix the Western Corridor so that we can have passenger rail come from New York City right to Burlington, and then hopefully from beyond into Montreal. And that will help in all kinds of different ways, from tourism to trade and freight as well. So that would be something that I would focus on, and something that we have been focusing on for a number of years.
Absolutely. For the last 6 years, I have been working so hard, and our team has been aggressively pursuing federal grants. We've increased over $100 million of investment in the Western Corridor Rail Program. We are now 12 miles away from getting the Ethan Allen from Rutland to the Queen City. This is going to make a huge difference, and it's going to build from there. On the eastern side, I'm so excited about the progress we've made. We have been negotiating for the last 3 years with the province of Quebec. And believe it or not, we have to negotiate with the province of Quebec, with the state of New York, with the state of Massachusetts, and Connecticut, because we are all in an agreement with Amtrak. We have made huge progress, and I am so ready to be that governor to actually get it done, because I have been in these negotiations. We have made huge progress on getting a facility in downtown Montreal so people can go straight from the border across. Very difficult, very important, and I'm ready to do it.
Mr. Lee, transportation.
I cross the border all the time. I have a radio show in Montreal. I'm lucky. I played up there. I have good rapport. Denny Cordair, the mayor, loves me. He wants to bring the Expos back. And what we got to do on the federal level, we got to have a pact that we can go up there anytime we want, and we can come back anytime we want. That hassle that you have to come back in here, it's just embarrassing. And I feel so bad about it because, you know, with the Red Sox going up there, they have to pass through here. The Yankees have to pass through the western side of the state. All this money has the potential to coming through our state and heading on to Montreal. You know, I've always been a train guy. You know, I ride trains all the time. I rode them down to spring training. You know, there's nothing more romantic than taking the train across Canada and seeing the end of your train come by twice on a curve. It's like, go there, take a train, get rid of your car, shoot your television. Thank you.
Ms. Minter, would you like to clarify your position on the carbon tax?
So I do not support a carbon tax for Vermont. What I am looking forward to is building on the work that I've been working on for the last 3 years in the Transportation Agency, working with other states throughout the Northeast region. You know, I was the president of the National Association, the Northeast Association of State Transportation Officials. We had initiatives to actually work as a region. And it takes strong leadership to actually build successful policy region-wide. That's why I want to continue the work I've been doing on expanding the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. This program, which was started under Governor Douglas, actually reduced carbon emissions throughout the Northeast by 24% and brought over $10 million to Vermont to invest in energy efficiency and renewable efficiencies. So this is what we can do when we build the transportation sector into the Greenhouse Gas Initiative. And I'm excited to be the leader that it takes to work collaboratively across the region.
Mr. Scott, carbon tax, are we going to go there?
It sure sounds like she supports a carbon tax. Whether it's regionally or for the state, it sure sounds that way. I'm not in favor of the carbon tax. I would, if a carbon tax came to my desk as governor, I would veto it.
Phil, I'm so sorry you don't understand policies that relate to reducing emissions. The Greenhouse Gas Initiative is actually a cap and trade program where states like Vermont that reduce emissions receive benefits in terms of investments. Just like we've received on the electric side, we've received over $10 million of investments. We will be able to receive investments, not taxes, for alternatives to the single occupant vehicle, for rail, helping us get our rail back in, our transit. This is what we can do when we work together to reduce our emissions in Vermont. Those states that go above the cap will actually have to invest in what we need, transferring our energy economy to a non-carbon based economy.
Final word, Mr. Scott. Okay, let's Phil Scott first.
Cap and trade in California costs them 11 cents a gallon. That sounds like another tax increase. So we have the carbon tax and the cap and trade. So it sounds expensive to me. And we're already overburdened by taxes as it is. We don't need any more.
Quickly, Sue Minter, then Bill, you'll get it.
You know, Phil is being supported in this election, $1.2 million funded by the National Republican Governors Association and the oil billionaire Koch brothers. Do you know why they've been opposing a cap and trade in California for the last decade? Do you know why this is such an issue? Let's talk about what's happening. We cannot let out-of-state oil tycoons buy this election. And I am surprised to find Phil Scott towing the National Republican line to talk about climate change as if it is not a problem. We have to come together around this problem. Climate change is real. It's happening right here in Vermont. It's affecting jobs. Let's think about last winter. What happened in the Northeast Kingdom when the snow machines didn't come to the general stores? What happened to the snowplow drivers that couldn't actually get work? What is happening when we lose our winters? This is serious. This is why we have to come together. We need leaders who are going to address this critical issue of our time.
Mr. Lee.
Those of us that lived in the kingdom kind of liked it. You know, I had to shovel my driveway 4 times, you know, and I go, wow, that's unbelievable. You know, what have those ridge lines done for us? They've wrecked our ridge lines. They've sent the credits down to Connecticut, and it's all because of the Koch brothers. You're right about that. But you've got to get out. You've got to get out of it with the gas dependency and the fracking and stuff. You're ruining your water. You got to realize you got to tackle. These are all symptoms of problems. The problem is the fact that we're ruining our environment. We're just killing it. You never see a deer eating down on a river anymore, running through a pasture. They go run through there like they're on fire, because they are on fire. You know, they only eat up in the high pastures nowadays because that's the only food that hasn't been sprayed or anything else. We have ruined our rivers. We have ruined our dairies. We have shot our cows with BST right in the ass from Monsanto, and you are drinking that stuff, and it's killing you. You wonder why we don't live too long? That's the problem.
Thank you very much. If you're just joining us, it's 8 o'clock. This is the Vermont PBS gubernatorial debate. Candidates Bill Lee, Sue Minter, and Phil Scott are here. We have another hour to go in this debate. And next week, I'd like to invite you to come back at the same time for the Lieutenant Governor's debate right here on Vermont PBS. It was also mentioned during your opening questions, folks, college, I heard once or twice. And in fact, Vermont has a very high rate of student high school graduation, but actually a low number of students who actually go on to college, one of the lowest in the country. A VPR Castleton Polling Institute poll shows that 84% of respondents don't think that education beyond high school is affordable to most Vermonters. Now, there's a lot being said this year on the national level about free college tuition. Is this something that we can be addressed on the state level? Is this something we can actually do, or is this campaign talk? Mr. Scott, you first.
Well, we certainly want to have an affordable education for our youth, and that could come in all kinds of different ways. I think tech ed is something that we should really be taking a look at. I'm a product of the vocational program. When I went to Spalding High School, I did my afternoons in vocational training, and I did my mornings in college prep before going on to UVM, and then I wanted to be a tech ed teacher. I don't believe that we focus enough on the trades, and I believe that in our school systems we should reinstitute industrial arts, more tech ed, more maker space to tap into the creative minds of the youth. I think there's going to be, the trades are going to be the future. The service technicians of the future are going to need some training. 2 years would be enough in some respects. But we should also make it affordable by cutting down the cost of borrowing more than anything else. I had it, my daughter went to school in Rhode Island, and she came out with debt. And the Sally Mays of the world came in with a 9% interest rate after she obtained financing.
Thank you. Sue Minter, can we offer free college tuition?
I have made college affordability a centerpiece of my campaign. Why? Because right now, 2/3 of the jobs of the 21st century require some kind of education and training beyond high school. And here in Vermont, while we do a great job getting kids through high school, we do a very weak job getting them beyond. 4 out of 10 Vermont high school graduates are not continuing. And that's why I've proposed Vermont Promise, 2 years of tuition-free community or technical college to give the next generation the opportunity for qualifying for livable wage jobs and economic security. It is critical because when I'm traveling and talking to the businesses of this state, they cannot find qualified workers. It's their biggest challenge. We need to invest in the students to make the workforce to grow our economy. This is my Vermont Promise. I am committed to this, and yes, we can.
Mr. Lee, can we offer free college tuition to Vermonters?
Yes, and it's a race to the top, which at first it was no child from behind, or no child, that's very Catholic of me. No child left behind by the Bush administration, which was terrible. It was terrible, and then all of a sudden it was race to the top by the Democrats, which is not right. You have to be diversified in your education. If you don't have jobs at the end of it, what good is your education? You can be all you want, but all of our brain drain, all of our kids are leaving the state. So you got to be more diversified. You got to have jobs at the end of it. You've got to be more multidimensional. You have to be a generalist, not a specialist. That's what's wrong with our educational system. They're trying to make you specialize when you've got to be a generalist. I'm a bonded locksmith. I pitched for 14 years. I'm still pitching today. I'm still pretty healthy, and I do a lot of different things. I dig my potatoes by hand. I hate the lawnmower, and I hate weed whackers, and I hate all those things that blow leaves around. Go out and rake them yourself. That's what we got to do. You need a healthier body, and then we'll worry about the education.
Sue Minter, is there a price tag on your plan that we just heard?
Yes, we will be raising $6 million in the first year through a bank franchise fee on large banks with over $750 million worth of deposits. Listen, we can't afford not to do this. Right now, with 4 out of 10 kids not going beyond, we see a growth of generational poverty. Kids, it used to be enough to have a high school diploma, but it's not anymore. And that's why we have to be thinking about the future. We have 40% of kids coming to kindergarten unready to learn in Vermont, and 4 out of 10 not going beyond. What does that mean for the future of our Vermont? What does it mean for the future of our economy? We must invest in these students. And you know, when you get an associate's degree, you earn on average $12,000 more per year. With a bachelor's degree, you earn on average $32,000 more per year. That's what Vermonters need. They need an education, they need qualifications, and they need great paying jobs so that they can live, work, and stay right here in Vermont.
Mr. Scott, does any part of that plan interest you?
Well, here we go again. Nothing is free. Somebody has to pay. and she's going to raise taxes on somebody. There's going to be a fee increase for the big banks, and they don't have a magical bank account that's going to come out of. They are going to charge us. We're going to pay for it in some way. I mean, whether it's in checking account fees or fees in your bank, somebody has to pay. Nothing is free. Having said that, I think we need to make college more affordable and attainable for those who want to do it. But having something free doesn't necessarily make it so. I was able to give the commencement address to CCV a couple of years ago, and I was so inspired by what I saw as they walked across the stage to receive their diploma. Some of them having kids that were grown up at their side, and you could see it across their faces, the sense of appreciation they had for the education that they earned and worked for.
Mitchell, you can respond.
So I want to just talk about why we go ask for big banks to help be partners with us. First of all, they have a commitment to reinvest in communities. They also, over the last 10 years, have had pretty much a flat line in terms of how much they have invested into the general fund. Over the last decade, they've paid about $10.3 million in 2007 and looking at $10.5 million in the next year. Has anyone else's property taxes been flat? I don't think so. I think that banks can pay their fair share so that our students get a fair shake, so that we actually have a future with kids who have a job and economic security, so they can actually be participants in our economy and use the resources of the banks. It surprises me when I hear no plans for college affordability, but all I hear is that we can't do anything. We have to take this on. We have to commit to the future generations, because what else do we have for our future if we aren't supporting our kids? These are people that aren't going to go on, and it isn't free. They'll have to give community service, and they will have volunteer mentors to help be their champions.
Neil Goswami has a follow-up on this topic.
We go after
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
banks.
You go ahead. Yes.
We go after the banks because, as Eddie Sutton said, that's where the money is. They're the guys that have it all. They're the guys that keep it. They give it to us. They lend it out to us like it's frickin' gold or something like that. People can't get money. They can't get it because the banks. You look at The Big Short. If The Big Short had won the Academy Award, Bernie Sanders would be president of the United States. But what happened? Spotlight won
Follow up
it.
on
They went
education.
after the Catholics. They're always going after the Catholics. That's the difference.
Would any of you pursue loan forgiveness or other ways to reduce student debt here in Vermont in exchange for perhaps students agreeing to stay and work in Vermont?
Bill Lee, first.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I was
Would you?
Well, debt forgiveness
debt forgiveness. Yeah,
through service.
sure. I believe you should all be public service. You should donate 2 years of your life in this state to helping the state. I believe in always what Kennedy said when he started. Actually, it was his brother-in-law that started the service, where we went out in the we professed the United States we were the best. We're going to go out there and do everything. Now what do? We go to nations, and all we do is we throw drones at them and everything else. It's an embarrassment. I am so upset with the way this country is headed in the last 20 years after the Freedom of Information Act and all that thing went down on us. I am upset. Yeah, I'll give you forgiveness, everybody. I'll let everybody out of jail, and I'll let them go out there and work on the roads and fix the bridges, because we put them in there because we created a society that made them criminals. Eugene Debs, look it up.
Sue Minter, debt forgiveness.
Look, if we're going to do debt forgiveness, we need a revenue source for that too. I would prefer to not let our kids go into debt and let only those kids who can actually manage to get into the process. Let's just talk about it. Kids decide at the 6th grade whether or not they're going to aspire beyond high school. We need to give them hope. We need them to have the volunteer mentors that my Vermont Promise program will have, so they can actually go into college, so they can have the 2 years. It's going to cost the same, but it's only going to help those who have the capacity to get in, to fill out those FAFSA forms, and to actually believe that they can do it. Our kids, there's a whole generation of kids who aren't going beyond high school. If we want to break the generational cycle of poverty, if we want to grow economic opportunity and security for the next generation, we've got to give them a chance. That's my Vermont promise. You're going to pay for it either way. I'd rather give it to them up front and give them a hope and give them a chance.
Any debt forgiveness in a Scott administration?
Let's look at what the real problem is. We have a demographic issue here in this state. We have a population that's stagnant. We're losing this category from 25 to 45. We've lost 30,000 people out of the category alone since the last census. Those are the folks that buy homes, have families, utilize services, buy products, and pay taxes. So that's what we need to rebuild. And we have fertile ground here. We have 10,000 college students every single year here in this state that graduate. And so they're the ones that we should be asking, what is it going to take to keep you here? And I think what they'll tell you is they want opportunity, they want affordable housing, and they want to be able to live here and afford to live here. What we're doing right now, when you hear all these schemes of raising more taxes and fees and spending more money, we're not focusing on the economy. We're not focusing on the opportunity in order to have them be able to stay here and be able to live here, as well as our seniors. I mean, it's the affordability crisis that's the real problem.
We also have a declining enrollment in our Vermont state colleges. Did the recent Linden State, Johnson State merger go far enough?
Well, we'll see. I think Jeb Spalding's done a great job as chancellor thus far. I think that was a good move to merge the two. I think we're going to have to look at other opportunities. But again, if we can make for a better Vermont so that we can have more opportunity here, I think we'll have more economic opportunity as well for our higher ed institutions. They're part of our economy as well, and an important part at that.
Colleges?
Look, I think my plans do exactly what we've just been talking about, helping to keep young people here and putting more students into our state college system. You know, we can't just beg Vermonters to come, for the students to stay. We need to create great communities. That's what my Invest Vermont is all about. Great communities, livable wage jobs, affordable housing, just like we did in Barrie, where we put $19 million of public investment into that downtown, have leveraged over $45 million of private investment. That's what we can do around this state. That's what's going to bring young people to stay here, young entrepreneurs. And you know what? I have the plans to do this. We are talking about cutting taxes. I don't see how that is anything but a Republican talking point that isn't going to solve our problems. I have real plans to make this work. I want to bring people here and young people. I have a VT outdoors plan. Let's build on our great recreational assets. That's what young people want to come to Vermont to do, to recreate, to have new jobs, to be great parts of our economy. We can do that.
It's time for healthcare. Let's switch over. And if you don't know it by now, 97% of our citizens are now covered under Act 48, enacted a few years ago. One of the best percentages in the United States. But Vermont Health Connect, the system it created, has been riddled with numerous problems. I don't think I'm telling you anything that you don't know. Under your administration, simply put for our audience, where do we go from here on healthcare, Mr. Scott?
Well, first of all, we have to pull the plug on Vermont Health Connect. I think it's simple. We take a look at what's been happening over the last number of years, a number of failed promises along the way to shore up this IT structure that's dysfunctional, that's never worked appropriately. We're still getting calls in our office every single day from people that are having problems accessing the system and getting changes in the system. And that's just not after spending over $200 million on this failed initiative. You have to have the will. You have to show the courage and the leadership to say enough is enough. When you find yourself in a hole, you stop digging. And we're still digging. And what we need to do is transition to something else, whether it's the federal exchange or going in with another state, whether it's Connecticut or Hawaii or somebody else. There's other alternatives to what we're doing. We have a custom-made IT structure that nobody else has, thank heavens, because they can't afford it.
Over here, Mr. Lee, next on healthcare.
Plug on anything. I mean, you've got $200 million into the game, and you're going to just tweak it a little bit, keep it going, you know, and take a lot of buses, like Bernie said, and let's go up to Montreal, and I'll get you an $18 X-ray with all my orthopedic guys. I've had 4 operations up there. I get my implants after getting hit with a line drive and knocked out. I get them for 1/3 the cost up there, and I pay out of my pocket. I don't use my insurance. You know, I go up there because it's a quality job and everything else. I'll drive the bus. Let's go up to Stansted and get whatever we need, thermoxetine, all the stuff that you need, your high-priced drugs. We'll get them for 10 cents on the dollar. You know, the system down here is broken. And we think we're going to fix it, this little state? No, you're not. You're going to have to erode the borders. We don't need borders. That's our problem on this planet. We got too many borders. We got to get rid of them. That's the thing. You make this and inform with New Brunswick and harness the tidal bore and harness the energy right there from the tides going up and down. And I'll tell you, we won't have any problems. Get regional.
Sue Minter, healthcare in the future.
I will say that it is the rising cost of healthcare that is really breaking the banks of our families, our school budgets, and rising property taxes, and our state budget. So what we need to do, first and foremost, is address that rising healthcare costs. And that's why we need to reform. We need to continue on our healthcare reform agenda, moving away from the current system of incentivizing more fees, more visits, more pills and procedures, and instead focus on investing in health and outcomes. That's the kind of reform that I am looking forward to moving on. With respect to Vermont Health Connect, look, this has failed many Vermonters, and I want to say that it is undermining our faith in government. I have overseen large IT projects in a $600 million budget. I know that it is not simple to cut the plug. We have to have a plan. If we cannot make this functional, and I'm going to look at the independent assessment, understand what the opportunities are, but we have to have a plan that doesn't kick people off their health care.
And what do we do with Medicaid beneficiaries if we scrap it?
If we scrap
Health Connect.
So what I'm saying is that we can't just scrap Vermont Health Connect unless we have a plan to do so, precisely because it will cost, we have an estimate of over $24 million up front, and those are state dollars, not federal dollars. And I understand that 17,000 people will lose their health care benefits. The issue is, it isn't simple to jump to the federal exchange because our programs in Vermont actually support so many different programs, which the federal exchange won't cover. So if I learn that we can't actually make this system work, I will come up with a plan that is very thoughtful about not allowing people to lose their health care coverage.
Should have actually directed that to you, Mr. Scott. Medicaid beneficiaries.
Yeah,
If we
first
scrap
of all,
Health Connect.
30,000 people in Vermont that are on Vermont Health Connect can pretty much tell you it's not working. So we need to pull the plug on it. It's as simple as that. It's been promised in 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016 that we could fix it by Governor Shumlin, and it hasn't been done. So it's time to say enough is enough and move to something else. Now, as far as Medicaid is concerned, Vermont, there's other initiatives. When I spoke to Connecticut, they said they could handle the Medicaid portion within their IT structure. Hawaii had the exact same contractor that we did, CGI to begin with, and they moved to the federal system. They kept a portion of what was built for Medicaid. Now, we could talk to them, and I'm sure that they could give us some opportunity and some ideas for transitioning to the federal exchange without losing anyone off from Medicaid. So this isn't going to happen overnight, but it's something that we just need to transition to over the next year, have a plan for doing so, and I'm absolutely positive we can do it.
Yoga Swami, on healthcare, a quick follow-up.
If you are elected, would you support universal health care or an expansion of Dr. Dinosaur, which has been proposed to allow kids up to 26, 27 to stay on that program for children? And if so, how would you pay for it? Because it seems to be an expensive endeavor. Mr. Lee.
Run your children more at a younger age. That's the key. You get them out, you run them. You create your own endorphins, you have a healthier body. You quit eating the junk that we have here, and we'd have a much healthier environment. I'll tell you, I've seen David Reed right now is on his deathbed in Greensboro. He fought on Mount Suribachi. He's 92 years old. I shook hands with him. I bought the top 14 acres of his farm. That's the guys. I'm so embarrassed about the baby boomers and what we've done on this planet with Medicare and everything else that I'm ashamed to be taking any benefits from this federal government. These are the guys that did it. When my father was on his deathbed and he was laying there, the psychiatrist come go, "Mr. Lee, how you feeling?" He goes, "I feel great today." He always had a great attitude like that. I'd look at the bill, $475 for saying I feel great. That's what's wrong with America.
Ms. Minton.
What I am focused on for healthcare reform is reducing the costs of the system. Let me tell you about what I saw yesterday at Cathedral Square. It's a senior housing development in Burlington. They are using an innovative program called SASH, something I worked on supporting when I was a legislator. They are providing healthcare to seniors in their homes when they need it most. Regular routine wellness care. You know what they've demonstrated, because they've discussed what are the outcomes and what are the costs, that providing care for seniors in their home when they need it is actually reducing significantly anybody's use of hospitals, which of course is the most expensive care. In fact, they've demonstrated over $1,500 of savings per patient per year. Look what we can do when we think differently. That's what we need to be thinking. How do we provide more resources for prevention and community-based health? And how do we actually incentivize that? The healthcare system we have now incentivizes more people going to the hospital and treating them there. We've got to build a system that can actually invest in health.
Mr. Scott, final word on healthcare.
Well, I believe everyone deserves access to affordable health care. I think that that's a common goal that all of us probably share. But we've seen healthcare spending go up 20% in the last 6 years, in part because we spent a lot of time on experiments that just didn't pan out. As I talked about before, transitioning from the Vermont Health Connect to something else is a first step, at least to take that structurally. And you asked about Dr. Dinosaur. The RAND Corp is doing a study on that at this very moment. I'm looking forward to the results of that. It's something that the legislature had asked for. But I'm concerned about taking that portion. When you look at the overall population of Vermont, that's part of our problem. We have an aging demographic. There's less people, less of our youth here. And when you have the healthy youth, that is what drives down the cost in planes, because they don't use the system as much. So we need more youth in the state in order to do that. If you take that portion out for Dr. Dinosaur, you're going to elevate the costs for everyone else from 26 to 65.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a very short break right now. And when we return, members of the studio audience will have questions for these candidates. You're watching the gubernatorial debate on Vermont PBS.
We'll return to the Vermont Votes 2016 debate for governor right after this short break.
Hey, you there. Do you like what you're watching? We'd like to know. Vermont PBS is conducting an online survey to better understand what you, the viewers, would like to see. We want to make sure that we are bringing the very best of Vermont to you. Visit vermontpbs.org and look for the viewer survey banner. It'll take only 5 minutes, and when you're finished, you'll be entered in to win some great prizes. Visit vermontpbs.org and click the survey banner and share your thoughts.
Vermont PBS kicks off the PBS Arts Fall Festival with community screenings of its premiere offering, Hamilton's America, a behind-the-scenes look at the hit Broadway musical, Hamilton. Follow Lin-Manuel Miranda and his team as their vision becomes reality, and join your neighbors in a spirited follow-up discussion. These community screenings are free and open to the public, though due to limited seating, pre-registration is strongly encouraged. Register at vermontpbs.org/Hamilton. Hamilton's America. Catch a free screening near you and join the discussion. Hope to see you there.
What I love about Vermont PBS is that it is very eclectic. And it has things like the Antique Roadshow, the TED Talks, and of course Nature, which is one of my favorite programs.
It's been such an important part of our lives since 1971. First our kids watched the children's programs, then the nature programs, and now my husband and I are addicted to the news shows.
I watch the news on Vermont PBS because I get more coverage than just a soundbite.
I like the coverage of politics on Vermont PBS because it's civil. People aren't yelling and throwing things at each other.
Nothing beats public television.
It's been an important part of our life all these years, and I hope that you'll support it just as we do.
We're the interns.
And we love Vermont PBS.
Once again, here's moderator Joe Marone.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the gubernatorial debate here on Vermont PBS. Candidates Bill Lee, Sue Minter, and Phil Scott are here for another half hour debating the issues. We have members of our studio audience here who are now going to question them. And first up, Richard Smiles from Essex.
For all of you, your positions, please, on universal background checks for gun ownership in Vermont.
Left to right first with Mr. Lee.
Yeah, we got the information, find out who's got them. Give them a psychological test too, you know. Guns don't kill people, bullets kill people, you know. Make bullets, reduce clip size, but I believe everybody's entitled. I'm not going to tamper on the Second Amendment rights, but the rights say, if you read it right, a well-armed militia, so you got to join the militia. I'll run it, you come to me, I will not send you into a foreign war, you join up, we'll fix roads and highways, we'll lower the hunting rights and everything else, because I'm a firm believer in allowing people to get out there and shoot. I'll introduce pheasants back here. It's going to get warmer. There's nothing better than a rooster jumping out from under your legs and your pointer being on him, and you knock him down, and that dog goes and gets it and brings it back and drops it right at your feet, because we're all hunters and gatherers, and we got to continue that. And I'm a firm believer, but yeah, I check everybody, and half the people, if you want a gun, you don't deserve a gun.
Sue Minter, universal background checks.
I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment and Vermonters' rights to own guns, and I honor the hunting heritage here. But I do believe it is time for common sense gun safety, and I support background checks for all guns. Why? Because we have a national epidemic of gun violence in this country. And sadly, we're not immune here in Vermont. And I know what's really happening because I've been told that we don't have a problem. But I've seen the problem, and it's often behind closed doors. And I'm talking about domestic violence. Because in Vermont, the majority of our homicides are domestic violence related, and the majority of those are with guns. In states that have background checks for all handguns, 46% fewer women are shot to death by their intimate partner. So I say yes, I'm going to stand up for gun safety. I'm going to protect women behind their closed doors, and I'll stand up to the gun lobby.
Mr. Scott.
Vermont has one of the lowest crime rates in the nation, and I'm not advocating for any changes in our gun laws. I believe we do it right here in Vermont. I believe we should enforce the laws we have, but I'm not advocating for any changes in our gun laws.
Richard, sufficient answers?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next up, from Milton, is Kate Kadriak. Kate?
I would like to ask each of you, what is your plan for the struggling farm economy, especially the conventional dairy farmers, where their only option for survival is to become organic, and how could we help them transition into that?
Let's go from the right to the left with Mr. Scott first.
Well, certainly we have to recognize that the dairy industry in particular is one of the most important industries as part of our traditional heritage. It's something that we need to protect. When people come to Vermont, recreate here for tourism and so forth, they rely on the farmers, the dairy farmers in particular, to have those views and so forth. So we have to work hand in hand with them. We can't rely we can't force them into paying. I know we've talked a lot about water quality here in Vermont, and we need to clean up Lake Champlain, but we can't put it on the backs of just the farmers. We're all in this together. We need to work together. We've all benefited from the farming community over the last couple of centuries. So we need to protect them as well and recognize they're an important part of our economy.
Ms. Minter.
You know, right now, farmers in our state are really struggling. Of course, we have very low milk prices, and there are additional requirements being placed upon them for our water quality, all of which I will support as governor. But I know that our dairy farmers need technical assistance. They need support and best practices to ensure their management. And I agree that there may be some who, if they can transition to organic, where the prices are much higher, that might be a sustainable option for them. So I will have a Secretary of Agriculture who will be looking to support those conventional farmers, but also to help with that transition. I also have a program called Innovate Vermont. It looks to drive innovation in our 4 key sectors of our economy. And one of them is our farm, food, and forest economy. Bill was talking about the great Pete's Greens and all of the exciting innovative farms and food industries in the Northeast Kingdom and elsewhere. We've got Jasper Hill cheese. We have incredible dairy products. This is the future of Vermont, this renaissance of our great agricultural economy.
Mr. Lee on Vermont's
Your boy has his
farm
own
economy.
cheese company?
You're up, sir.
Organic. They got to go organic. You got to break the Monsanto, the Cargill, the Arthur Daniels Midland. You got to quit killing all of our kids and everything with all these high-tech foods that are going into us. We got to eat close to the vest. We have to go back to the hexagonal double digging technique that they used in Indonesia, where you can feed twice as many people on 1 acre of land. Once you start adapting, this is going to be the breadbasket. We are going to be fine in this state. We get our farms smaller. We're going to sell to all New York, all of Boston, Montreal. Everybody's going to buy it. Of course, everybody's going to be getting on it, so we got to get on it first. We got to be out there first. We got to get the markets and get it. 1,000 chickens at the most, all organic. Be diversified. You know, have ducks, have that. Just let's go back to the way Vermont used to be.
Kate, how'd they do? All right. Next up is Garrett Sullivan from South Burlington, and after Garrett will be Frank Donath from Burlington. And while they're making their way to the microphone, I'd like to remind folks, this is the first of 4 Thursdays in a row here on Vermont PBS for debates. Next week, the candidates for Lieutenant Governor will be here beginning at 7:30. Then the candidates for the United States House, the week after that, October 20. That one starts at 8 p.m. And finally, all the candidates on the ballot for the United States Senate will be here on Thursday, October 27 at 7:30. So mark those down and please do join us. And Garrett Sullivan from South Burlington.
Thank you. This is to all the candidates. What would you say to try to win over voters who, especially in this political climate of extreme polarization, feel jaded, disenfranchised, and untrusting of government?
Starting in the middle with Sue Minter this time.
Well, I've given my whole adult life to public service. And I actually think our government is something that we need to believe in, trust in, and feel confident about. That's why I have worked very hard in my public service to focus on being accountable to taxpayers. We really have lost faith in our government. I want to make sure we know that government can function and is there when we need it, just like we did in Irene. I mean, we had over 500 miles of road damaged overnight. We had to pull together. I was at the transportation agency. The emergency operations had been flooded out. It was up to us at the State Agency of Transportation to pull together, to innovate, to partner, and to do what nobody thought possible. Actually reconnect those roads, rebuild those bridges in less than 4 months. That's what government can do as it builds great partnerships. That's what we are there for. I want to be a governor that helps make sure we are providing great service to the customers, great accountability to the taxpayers.
To this side, Mr. Lee.
Well, first thing you got to do is quit watching CNN and Fox News. That's the start. Only watch this channel. Only listen to this radio station. It's the only thing. Amy Goodwin's a good friend of mine, sister-in-law. You know, I go way back to Common Cause, Fair Share. I go back. The government's not the problem. The problem's the special interest groups, the Koch brothers, the guys that are propagandizing and saying everything's bad, and the sky is falling, the sky is falling. I thought it was a beautiful day. Thank you.
Mr. Scott, polarized climate.
Well, it is an issue right here in this state. a lack of faith and trust in government and across our nation. And when we see what's happening on the presidential scale, it really is alarming. But what we can do is act appropriately. 20 years ago, I didn't have a political bone in my body, had no interest in politics, but I started complaining about what was going on in Montpelier and decided to run myself, stepped up. I've been in the minority my whole political life for 16 years now, but I've always been able to get something done because I've always been able to reach across the aisle, bring consensus together, bring people together, and look to what we should be doing. We should be public servants, not politicians. You know, that's what we need to do, and just act appropriately. So when I was put in a position of leadership when I was in the Senate by then Senator Welch, Congressman Welch. And it wasn't because we agreed politically or philosophically, but we trusted each other from a hand-to-hand basis. I mean, it was just as simple as that. You know, just lack of faith and trust is what we need to rebuild.
Garrett?
Very good. Thank you, candidates.
All right. Frank Donath from Burlington is up next.
Thank you. I was glad to hear you speaking about about a balanced budget earlier this evening. I think I listen to that every 2 years. I've also heard that the deficit has been rising after every budget every year, and that it continues to grow and grow. I think I heard tonight it was 40 million. I thought that I had read 120 million. I'm not sure which is which. But even though I've heard that it's so bad that the budget is a deficit like that, the sky hasn't fallen. In fact, when I see around Vermont, life looks wonderful. And I know I have to make a reservation to get in a restaurant sometimes in Burlington. So is it such a bad thing that we have the deficit we have?
All right. Built-in deficits. Let's go right to left this time. Mr. Scott.
It absolutely is problematic. And I know that here sometimes in Chittenden County, things look pretty good, but you need to travel around, get to Rutland, get to Bennington, get to Brattleboro, get to Springfield, go up in the Northeast Kingdom. There's problems throughout the state. And some of the deficits that we're facing right now is a result of being over-optimistic in expectations in terms of how much the revenue or the economy will grow. They've been basing that on like 3%, and then they've been growing it by another 2%. So they've been thinking that it's going to grow at 5% every single year, when it only grows about 1.5% to 2%. So there's always a deficit in between. So there's always a recession after. So this past year, the year before that, after the budget is passed, a month after, there's a revenue downgrade. And then all of a sudden it's an emergency. They bring the emergency board in and they cut. And so what we need to do is be realistic right up front about what it is we can afford, and not have this over-optimistic expectation.
Sue Minter.
So I do want to clarify between a deficit, which we don't have, but a shortfall, a budget shortfall. In other words, the projections that we all set our budget on actually come in short. And so then we have to make that up. It's different from going into debt, which we never do. In fact, we're one of the few states in the country that doesn't require a balanced budget, but we always present one. But we do need to talk about how we're going to grow our economy, because too many Vermonters really are struggling. That's why I have Invest Vermont and Innovate Vermont. That's my economic development plan. Investing in our great downtowns, creating more opportunities for entrepreneurs, for housing, just like we did in Barrie, just like we've done in St. Albans, just like we've done in my town of Waterbury, actually pulling together, setting a plan, and building economic opportunity and growth. We also are going to innovate around 4 key sectors of our economy: our advanced manufacturing, high tech, and the green economy, both the farm, food, and forest economy, and the renewable energy and efficiency economy. I have plans to help grow our economy, get livable wage jobs for the future.
Mr. Lee.
With hair like we've got, we don't have to worry about a thing. The thing is, I'm leaving my doctor's office. They didn't take my blood at 8:05. They said there wasn't a technician. So then I get on the road because my physical's at 11:05. I wanted to eat something. So I get on the road and I'm following this logging truck, and it's got Quebec plates. And on it, it had 43 of the most beautiful maple logs with small hearts. And I had insult to injury. I had to follow that truck at 50 miles an hour all the way up Route 14 as it passed my house and went into Canada to be milled. That's our problem. Everything's left this thing. We've got to do our stuff ourselves. We got to get small saws. We have the best arboreal forest. We have the best land. We got best everything. Nothing's going to happen. Deficit? What deficit? We ain't going to have a deficit. We're the greatest state on this planet. I picked this state. Actually, it picked me. I've been here longer than I've been anywhere else. Thank you.
Final words. First off, sir, answers you heard? Do you have follow-up?
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you. Valerie Carzello is next. Valerie from South Burlington.
First of all, I want to hear what you're going to do for women's issues in Vermont, and I just want to have a follow-up with an ad that ran recently with the bobblehead. I know you don't coordinate with PACs, but Sue would be our second female governor. We've never sent a woman to Congress from Vermont, so it was kind of insulting as a woman to see an ad with her nodding with everything that Peter Shumlin said. Do you actually believe that?
Let's start with that first, sir, the bobblehead ad.
Yeah, it's not something that we can coordinate. In fact, when we were accused of coordinating with the RGA and others on some ads, which we weren't, and that was dismissed. So we're very careful. We can't coordinate in any sense of the word. But I don't agree with, I think we're above that. I've never run a negative campaign in my entire life. This is my 9th campaign. I've never run a negative campaign, and I've been successful.
Rubbed me the wrong way as a woman to see that.
Well, I think it rubs, whether you're a man or a woman,
yeah.
I think it rubs you the wrong way, because
so can you ask them to take it off the air?
We can't coordinate in any way with anybody, and Sue can't either.
Is that the Koch brothers? Who's running that?
That's a good question. Who is running that? You don't know who's running that ad?
No, it's by the RGA or somebody.
Yeah, that's the Koch brothers.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
So,
oh yeah.
What would you do for women in Vermont?
And that's a question on the floor for all of you, and
Yes.
we'll start with Mr. Lee.
Well, an equal wage, equal time, equal pay, raise the minimum wage up to $15.50, $16, put more money in the economy, and the deficit goes down. I'm always been, my aunt is in the Hall of Fame. She taught me. Hazel, her mother, broke her leg sliding into second when she was 47 years of age. My grandfather played. I was raised with strong women. My great-grandmother had 3 husbands over for Thanksgiving, back in the 1800s. That doesn't happen all the time. So, my grandmother said, Billy, she'd give me a strong cup of children's coffee with condensed milk and everything, and then she'd give me a box of shotgun shells, and she'd go out and say, go out and shoot dinner. And that was my life.
That's very helpful, thank you.
Sue Minter.
Thank you for raising the question. We know that 43% of women who work full-time in Vermont still can't meet their basic needs. And there are many issues that I think particularly affect women. Women who are predominantly more often female-headed households, which are more and more falling into poverty. There's many things we can and will do. We're going to increase the minimum wage. We know that one of the challenges is that women predominantly are in low-wage jobs like child care provider, elder care providers. We need to actually help improve young girls and young women's occupational opportunities. This is part of my Vermont promise to get more kids, including women, into those livable wage jobs. We also need to promote them. We need to have more child care, and I'm going to be pushing for paid family leave so that women can have children. I was the Secretary of Transportation. Under my leadership, the number of women in the maintenance division doubled, and we created new lactation facilities for young moms to be able to work and have their care given.
Mr. Scott.
Well, despite what you might hear on some of the ads, I'm a moderate pro-choice Vermonter who supports marriage equality and equal pay for equal work. And I believe, I'm a father of 2 daughters, very independent, very proud of my daughters. And I want the best for them. I want opportunity for them. And if we're going to grow this economy, we're going to have everyone pulling in the same direction. on an equal basis. And you know, my dad passed away when I was 11, and my mom raised 3 boys, and she is the strongest person on the face of the earth, and she is one that inspires me, and we want to do better for women in Vermont, and it's something that I will seek to find equal opportunity for everyone.
Valerie, did I answer your questions?
Do you want guns out of the hands of domestic abusers?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I know it seems I'm picking on you. I'm a Spalding alumni. I'm from Barrie, so I just really needed clarification on some of these things because I wasn't clear. So.
Well, even if you weren't from Spalding, you could still pick on me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valerie. The minimum wage was mentioned twice just recently, and it is still on track to be raised to $10.50 an hour by 2018, but I believe that's where it ends. Governor Scott, Governor Minter, Governor Lee, what are you going to do about the minimum wage when you take office, or anything at all?
Am I first
Yes,
again?
sir.
Okay. You know, I was in the Senate back almost 10 years ago when we had a debate on the minimum wage, and I remember the debate quite well. And it was sold to many of us to raise the minimum wage, and then tie it to the index, to the cost of living, and that we would never ever have this discussion again. We won't have to raise the minimum wage again. We'll be able to, it'll just rise naturally with the cost of living. And that's in place today. In fact, there was an initiative a couple of years ago that will raise the minimum wage up far more than the federal standard. But I'm concerned about those small businesses, those small mom and pops. They're working multiple hours, the owners, trying to make ends meet. And if you raise the minimum wage on some of them, they're just going to work more hours and cut jobs. So I think we should allow this to continue to work. I think there should be entry-level jobs, and I think that teaches our youth something about structure.
Ms. Minter, the minimum wage.
Yes, I will be supporting an increase of the minimum wage to $12.50 an hour. And more than that, I want to make sure that we get more Vermonters qualified for livable wage jobs, because this really is the opportunity gap. As we've discussed earlier, we have too many people struggling to make ends meet because wages are not keeping up with the cost of living. And to deal with this affordability challenge, we need to get more Vermonters into those jobs. We need to connect the dots between our businesses and our students with internships, apprenticeships, certifications. That's what my Vermont Promise program is about. But it's also about a workforce development strategy. I was down in Windham County where they've come up with a terrific plan. They have a whole consortium of institutions for higher learning. The CCV and VTC, but also School for International Training, Marlborough, Landmark, and I'm forgetting the sixth one, sorry. But they are working in consortium with a group of businesses who want to know what kind of courses they need to have to get to those jobs that the businesses need, connecting the dots.
Mr. Lee, where's the minimum wage going?
It's got to go up. You need more money so you can pay more taxes to take care of all these services that everybody wants. And I want the lower caste and the middle class to make more money. But I'll tell you, there's a log laying out in Albany, and it's 30 feet long, it's about 12 feet, it's felted, it's off the ground so it's not rotting fast, and a spoon goes for $30, and I'll bet you there's 1 million spoons in that. And I'm telling you, that's what you got to do. You got your natural resources here, use them. Start being more diversified, all being artists. Ernest K. Becker, Denial of Death. The problem with our healthcare is everybody's out there. Live hard, die quick, leave a beautiful corpse. And that goes along with working. Get out there and do something and make things, and that's what Vermont's good at. We are diversified like that. Let's go out and make more products, and we don't have to worry about a damn thing because this is the best place to live.
Ms. Smith, hold on, quickly. Ms. Smith, when does your minimum wage go to $12.50?
I am going to push for 2018.
Thank you. Mr. Scott.
I want all Vermonters to make more money, but I don't think artificially inflating the minimum wage is going to do it. when you think about it, if you go to $15 an hour, there's nobody at the company that I co-own that makes less than $12.50 an hour. So those that make 15, let's say, if it's raised to 15, are going to want to make 18. Those that make 18 are going to want to make 21. Those that make 21 are going to want to make 24. It's just going to raise the cost of living throughout, and that's got to come out of somebody's pocket. So what we need to do is focus on the economy. This crisis of affordability is real, and the state government has caused part of this crisis of affordability, by the way, by raising taxes and fees to the degree that's been happening over the last 7 years. And so if we really want to focus on something, let's focus on the economy so there's more opportunity for everyone.
Wouldn't a higher minimum wage help attract those people to the state who you want to bring in?
I think if you ask those that are graduating, those 10,000 students that are graduating every single year from our colleges and universities, whether it's a $15 an hour minimum wage is going to keep them here, I would say no. I would say that they're looking for more opportunity. They're looking for more affordable housing. They're looking for more opportunity and jobs that are much higher than that. And that's what we should be focusing on as well, growing this economy so that we can attract more youth and rev up our economy so it's running on all cylinders. We're faltering. We're missing the mark on this, and we've been missing the mark on this for the last 7-8 years because we're not focusing on what it is that we can do to help ourselves. We're just artificially raising everything to take care of it.
Minimum wage?
I believe increasing the minimum wage is going to be putting more money in the pockets of those who need it the most. And when you have the ability to spend, it's going to help the economy grow, by the way, and it most importantly can help get people off of the services that they want to be able to be independent and self-sufficient. I, as the Secretary of Transportation, worked very hard to make sure that the folks of the front line, the folks who all year are working hard and dedicating to making sure your roads are safe in the winter and safe in the summer, I wanted to make sure they had a higher wage. We were able to increase their wage without having to bump up every other part of the business. So I think that businesses can do like we've done in government. Let's make sure we don't have such a huge disparity between people at the top and people who are giving their work daily. I've been so inspired by the folks that actually give of themselves day after day, believing in keeping our roads safe. And I'm thrilled that I was able to help them increase their wages and their earnings.
Final word on minimum wage, sir?
You got to be more creative. You take 200 Coors Light cans, you put them in a box. You put the box around the side of your house. You paint it black. You put in a small solar fan. It'll heat the whole damn side of the house. We just don't think outside the box here, and that has to do with jobs too. You know, use your head. Be more diversified. You know, you'll make more money. Put the Vermont label on it. Stamp it on it. Get it out there and sell it, because this state, it's a gold mine. You know, you don't realize it. This is a state of mind. It's a place that people come. I'll bring more people into this state. They'll be crossing here, and I just got to get the Devil Rays up there in Montreal. That's all I'm hoping for.
Thank you very much. Well, folks, it is time for closing statements. And before we began tonight, you all drew numbers for the order of the closing statements. And number one is Mr. Scott. 1 minute, please.
Well, thank you again for having us tonight. I've made it a practice in both my political and personal life to treat others the way I expect to be treated, with respect and civility. And that's what I'd like to end on, the importance of leadership. We have a deficit of faith and trust in our government and our leaders, both here and nationally. I think it's incumbent upon us, each and every one of us, to act appropriately in our own backyard, inspire others to do the same. It's about instilling that faith and trust that's been lost across this nation. When you get right down to it, our ability to make Vermont an even more inviting place for working families and jobs, our ability to grow the economy, make our state more affordable, give our kids the best education possible, all these things are tied to one common element, and that's leadership. It's going to take strong, courageous leadership, the ability to listen, to build consensus, to change the economics here in Vermont. Yeah, there's going to be some difficult decisions here, regardless of who is elected, but it's essential that we all tell the truth, don't overpromise, and always, always follow through.
Thank you very much. Next for a closing statement is Mr. Bill Lee.
I always had a good follow through. Kept me loose, kept me going, and I'll tell you something. Thank you, PBS, because this is the only station I ever watched, because it's the only place you could gain knowledge. You know, and in Nebraska, that's what's on the end, stands on Nebraska, stands for knowledge. So I think everything's fine. I see everything rosy. You know, I see no problems. I see that the problem is that what I hear, people are upset with their government. Well, you're looking at the only guy that's got his hands in his own pockets. I've only taken $20, and that was from a guy, 91-year-old from Wisconsin. And I told him, Sir, I don't want your money. Please, I don't want it. You know, I don't believe in money in politics. We got to get rid of cortisol, Citizens United. We've got to do these big things, or none of what we say today, here today, is going to be a hell of, it's just, you got to get rid of the big problems to save this little state. Thank you.
Sue Minter, closing statement.
Well, thank you for having this, and thank you all for listening tonight. I've spent the last year traveling from Bennington to Newport, meeting with Vermonters and learning about their challenges and looking for solutions. You know, Vermonters have a real choice in this election, and there are differences between us. I have plans to create livable wage jobs and affordable college. Phil's plans give tax breaks to corporations and leave the middle class behind. I support a woman's right to choose without exception, and Phil does not. And like 89% of Vermonters, I support background checks for all guns to keep Vermonters safe, which Phil opposes. I am optimistic about our future. I believe in Vermont, and I'm asking for your vote to be governor so that we can move Vermont forward and build an economy that works for all Vermonters. And Bill Lee, let's hope Socktober is a great month.
Well, I will echo those sentiments. Thank you very much. Thank you all candidates for joining us tonight. Thank you, Neil Goswami, for helping me with the questions, and thank you, audience, for taking part. Next week, it is the candidates for Lieutenant Governor, Thursday, 7:30, right here on Vermont PBS. For everyone at Vermont PBS, thank you for joining me, Joe Marone, and we'll see you next week.